this is the thing about paradox, which I put on that poster, is like, when we talk about things, it's often confusing because the things that are true at a certain level are not true at another level. So I say I know nothing. When I'm in being, I know being, and I experience phenomena, but I recognize that I don't actually know anything for sure about phenomena. They're just stuff. I recognize that on the other levels, I'm really making a whole lot of conclusions that aren't rock solid. They're just what we think is most likely. You know, we learn in life, but we never know anything for sure, right? The ego seeks control, seeks to know things absolutely, but it's humbled, which is an essential aspect of this integration, this tantric life in a sense, just the ongoing willingness to live, not hiding from life. We're humbled by the fact that we realize that we don't have control, and we don't really know. You know, sometimes we work so hard to get a result with things or to come to some conclusion, and in the end we end up with more questions. It's like what they say about professors. You know, I ended up with more questions. The more I learnt, the more questions I had. So there's no, because the external realm is, all the phenomena we see are fundamentally empty. They cannot be known. They will never ever be still. They're dreamlike in nature. They will never ever be solid. Nothing. Of course, as humans, we're aware of seeking a certain amount of solidity and belonging, but we don't. At the same time, we can hold the paradox that we know. It's maturity to know that we never will get ultimate solidity, that the answer cannot be in those things, the ultimate answer. So we look for solidity, which is what Advaita's going on about. The being in its emptiness is what you are, will always be there. It's the only place you will find absolute solidity. Not that you can stay there, but the fact that it's the first truth means it lends some degree of solidity to the way we interact with the non-solid, which is every single other thing than ourselves. So does that make sense? Like, you, in a sense, you really, in the deepest sense, you only know one thing, and that is yourself. But of course, in life, we use our wisdom to play probabilities and learn from our experience as best we can, right? But knowing that in the end we don't really know.
And the other question I have is, I have seen on the affiche that you speak about miracle.
Exactly what I meant there. It's like quite often Advaitists, and what you'll hear in most of the teachings here is to say, well, there is no hierarchy. If you started speaking to me and used your mind and say, that's mind, take that away, I don't want that, it's just mind, mind doesn't exist. Which is great for the seeing of the main level. The main level is your being, okay? The point I'm trying to make, which the other thing I was saying is, Advaita is for pointing, not holding. And the reason why I'm saying it is because many people become confused. They become attached to, they go to the teachings and they hear these very charismatic teachers talk about that they only stay in being, and that's what you have to do. And they may realize it in part of them, and then the other part of them is the mind going, well, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to do anything, I'm not allowed to seek, I'm not allowed to do any techniques. Then it confuses them because they actually don't even realize that they're holding on. If it was just the being, there would be no holding on. But the mind, it's ironic that they're saying don't use your mind, and then the result of that is you actually end up using your mind to hold on to your realization. When in fact, the best thing they could say would be like Nisargadatta and say, okay, realize it now. maybe remind yourself or read something when you feel the urge to go back into the depth of yourself. But don't hold on to this, because it's not a good way to function, pretending that there is no conventional world and you're not a person. Of course, from the depths you're not, but conventionally speaking you are. So just let it go and then integrate naturally, because that realistic appraisal of the fact that we work on different levels, multidimensionally, right, allows you to be open-minded about and less desperate about thinking that you're trying to get to some state that possibly doesn't exist, that possibly a lot of those people have just convinced themselves in their mind exists, that you can not be a person. So that's what I meant about multidimensional hierarchy. Like at one level, everything's okay, nothing matters. On another level, at the level of the heart, we're all one. Love is a reality. It's you just have to simply discriminate. It's better to be as one, because that reflects the reality, than separate. That's what the ego is. So how do you address the ego unless you actually see things on these multiple levels? If you're just hanging out and being, thinking you've been told that that's going to solve all your problems, and you just keep your hands off everything, I've just noticed that it doesn't work very well. So yeah, attend to all these levels simultaneously. And then in life, of course, if you then find that you've tried to be in being and you forgot to make any money, then you might be on the street, because I'm thinking, wait a minute, I was told that this would turn me into Superman, and so I decided, and that I should be very pure about it. And so I decided not to even take care of my life. And then you have to look at whether or not you are actually using that to deceive yourself. Because I've noticed that the big lessons in spiritual life are in life. Things like don't kid yourself. I mean, be honest with yourself. So quite often you're taught very methodical, old school teachings without any kind of context for the kind of questions that people come up with. Yeah, what's in your mind is legitimate. You need to bring it up to yourself or someone else, talk it until you're done with it. Not forever.
We are very happy to observe and that it's a change, and that the teaching is not for old-fashioned, because young people love to. They begin to be open mind, have to do and introduce some notion that's quite important.
Yeah.
We are very happy.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm not some young whippersnapper. I've been doing this for a long time.
We are old school, but it can be.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's another thing. I started 35 years ago myself, so it's like, and I would go to some of the teachers here, and they'd done Satsang for 5 years, and they would just start teaching. Or I remember there was a guy who came here, he was 19. He'd been doing it for 2 years after he saw how do you can see something, but you have absolutely you have no experience. You have no idea how it unfolds in your life. What I've noticed over 30 years, it just changes and twists and turns, and you could talk to other beginners like that, but really for people who've had 2 years of experience to start teaching, it's kind of, anybody who's had experience of life knows that that's kind of silly, right? And yet it happens all the time. So hopefully, yeah, we both have some experience. I mean, not that experience necessarily makes us wise, but it gives us a better chance, right? So on that fundamental level, like just being is increasingly getting better at just letting whatever is be. And at the same time, if you've learnt the techniques and you're attracted to the idea that you want to be a complete person, integrate your heart, integrate your life, all within the highest context, then you can learn that you can become a juicier person by working with the heart, and you can become an experienced person by living a life. But it's all about proper balance. The ultimate first, the heart, and the life. But if the life is very big, then yeah, you can get caught up and lose perspective and get really twisted and messed up. Right? So that's what I see. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Juicy person enjoy life.
Why not enjoy life? So this is where we started with these two guys who were interested in Tantra, even though I only used the word once on the poster, because I didn't want to be too, because no, I don't think anyone's ever talked about Tantra in Tiruvannamalai that I'm aware. Go to Rishikesh and put the word Tantra on a wall and the room will fill, but not here. So I don't know that much about Shaiva Tantrism, but I know a lot about Buddhist Tantra. I had a big period in my life when I was interested in Tibetan Buddhism, which is fundamentally a monastic sutra path, which means that restraint. If you have a temptation and a desire and all the things that come through you as a human, you tend to just go, well, okay, I don't want those. I'm going to stop that vasana and I'm just not going to indulge it, and ultimately it will just die off. That's essentially the sutra view, the monastic view. And to my understanding, the tantric view is like, well, I'm not 100% sure that that's going to work.
So the first view was what?
Yeah, I know, it's quite noisy, sorry.
So the first view was not tantric, but it was what? Sutra.
Well, in Buddhism they call sutra and tantra.
Ah, okay.
Like a monastic, traditional, very restrained life where you see any fault in yourself and you just simply apply the antidote and try not to indulge it. You will become pure by not doing ordinary human things.
Yeah.
Whereas the tantric view is like, well, that might not work, and I'm not very good. Well, they say that in our age, because we're so, it's an aspect of perhaps Kali Yuga that we're brought up in an indulgent culture, whether we like it or not. Especially most of us from the West, we've had these experiences. We've been told that it's okay to drink and eat meat and have sex and all this kind of stuff. So we can try to just stop that, or we can just say, well, how am I going to deal with this?
Thank you very much.
Okay, pleasure.
We go into the great massage.
Yeah, you relax.
See you.
Sure. And when you're talking about very strong forces like sexuality, for instance, you really see that for most people it's not that easy to just turn it off. Or some people try both. Like I tried both. I was completely celibate for 2 years, like absolutely zero sexuality whatsoever, and I learned something from it, but it didn't really take it away. It gave me a certain strength to be able to take it or leave it. But my sense of Tantra is that it's almost like, it's there, so you may as well go to it. It's like that, there's a fire somewhere in your being. You could just say that you can ignore it, or you can have this sense that if I don't go to it, I won't really know what I'm talking about. So I'm taking what they would call a more dangerous path, supposedly, in that it's dangerous in the sense that there's a greater risk that you're going to kid yourself, like I said before. You just want, on the one hand, you may just want this thing, and you're just going to lie to yourself that you're having some kind of some kind of transformation in the way you approach that experience, whether it's eating or sexuality or whatever. Or you actually go through the whole journey and you learn from it, or you experience it and you somehow transcend it that way. So that's my understanding of Tantra. Even Nisargadatta said who is a straight up Advaita, or most people would say, he said there's some desires you have to live through. You know, if they're deep, you're going to have to go through it. You can't just kind of pretend it's not there. You can, but it may not resolve unless you do. So that's the logic in my understanding of Tantra. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I want to ask, when you were celibate, you said for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
did you interact with women?
No.
No, you were in monastery.
Casually with a small number. Yeah, I was
Okay.
not exposed.
Yeah.
It helped me to not be triggered,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
physically within myself, I didn't find it difficult.
Okay. Being on your own wasn't difficult, but how was it when you were interacting with other women and something you feel some spark or some attraction? Did you?
I noticed that I kind of avoided them. Like sometimes
Yeah.
even in a relationship you tend to do that. It's like you
Yeah.
say, I don't want to be tempted, so I won't place myself in the way of temptation. It's like you're on a diet, you're not going to
Yeah.
just like hold chocolate cake in front of your hand,
Yeah.
right? It's just like you're making it hard on yourself. Maybe one day
Yeah.
it's just completely whatever, I don't care.
Yeah. No, because what I'm asking is, I have been single most of my life, and this is my normal response, is that there's a desire, but not to react on it, not to act on it, or not to go for it. This is very normal, natural response. And when, Arnie was a monk, and he was in a monastery, and he said the same thing when he was in a celibacy. He didn't feel the desire. He was very much at peace, and everything was okay, going okay. But whenever there was an interaction with a woman,
Right.
he felt attraction and
Right.
desire, and then he felt kind of a threat that thing became a threat to
Yep.
his peace.
Yeah.
And he felt that okay, he didn't like that place. Any interaction with human could destroy his peace. Any interaction with a woman can give him desires, and then we'll have to work on it and all that.
Right. So that's the logic of sutra. Is like in the old days, if you had a monastery and it looked like you could stay there your whole life, you could become very familiar with a deeply peaceful state of mind. But I suppose it depends on where you're coming from karmically. Like you live in a society that is possibly generally less licentious than the one I grew up in. So even before I knew it, I was involved in that. So it was in my system, so I had to deal with it in some realistic way. But that is the logic of Tantra. It's exactly that. It's that why is it so disturbing when he suddenly sees someone? You know? It's like the idea of Tantra is, well, if I go into this, then maybe part of that is just like I'm wondering. It's like these kid monks, they're horny, you know? It's like they're like, I've been told not to do this, but they want to live. They want to experience this thing, so they've got to deal with it, you know? So the Tantric says, let's deal with it. Let's go through it. Let's see. I don't know if I'm going to be satisfied at the end or I'm just going to get more vasanas, but I'm willing to find out.
So one more thing I want to say that there are people who go out of choice in celibacy for the purpose of sadhana or because they want a monk life. And what Ani talked to me from his monk life and life in monastery, he said that a lot of children, they are sent with their families to the monasteries and they don't have a choice. So they don't go out of their choice to become a monk.
No.
Or to celibate, but
that's
they
a
are
deeply
forced.
monastic culture, yeah.
Yeah, so that's when, then of course, what you say that they have a desire and they are like curious, thinking about it, going mad
Yeah.
in your
The
head,
adults
and
are
they don't know what to do.
the adults are idealizing that these kids are karmically ready and it's not going to be an issue for them. But you know, it's like what the West did with Christianity. They try to spiritualize the entire culture. They're kind of possibly getting their hands on stuff a little bit too much, you know, making a lot of assumptions. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
It can be a problem, right? It can be a problem, and so I suppose then the question is, what does the tantric person actually do with that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
about Sagadatta, that he was speaking about the I am. What he was referring, or what do you understand? The
Okay.
I am is.
Can we come back to that in just a
Can,
second?
after.
I'll just want to just complete this thing. Because I don't just want to say that's the reason why the tantric, the logic for that. What I've learned about Tantra, my practice of it, and it's not like, you know, the version that people are attracted to. Tantra is going to make you better in the bedroom and all this sort of stuff. To me, it's my general sense is that it's allowing what is in your nature to come through strongly and fully, and then turning it into something higher, something more spiritual. So if we take sexuality as the classic example, they talk about raising the energy through the chakras. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing, depending on, you might have too much energy in your head already and you may need to ground. So I consider that more of a metaphor. I think what you're doing is you're taking like a base desire, which is natural to the human being, a very strong desire, and then if you bring it into the heart, for instance, if you make sure that it's not thoroughly base, there's somehow meeting between, again, the different dimensions or levels of your being, that if the base is related to the higher, the level of the heart, for instance, if you make love, well, if your sex is making love, basically, then in a sense you're doing Tantra in the most general sense. And I mean, there's many very complicated rituals and so forth, but in the end, that's really my understanding of it. What's your sense?
I don't know much about it.
Okay.
I'm new to this. I just took a 6-day Kashmir Shaivism yoga course with yoga 2 hours and 1 hour and a half lectures on Kashmir Shaivism. That's all.
Okay.
So I don't have much to say about it.
Sure.
Kashmir Shaivism?
Yeah, it's the most quoted form of Indian Tantra that I've heard. I think it's similar to Buddhist Tantra. The big difference in general between Hindu Tantra and Buddhist Tantra is that often Hindu Tantra is taught like a yogic, physical discipline of detaching the body, which can be an aspect of sexuality as well. You're taking this desire and a certain level of detachment, a certain level of heightening, changes the nature of it to some degree. But within Buddhist Tantra, there's, particularly Tibetan, there's this sense that the heart is the key to everything. If you make love with compassion, for instance, but they have bodhicitta, the desire that all your actions, all your spirituality is about not just transcending the person into the everything, that there's a function to the way you make love. Imagine you're two gods making love for the universe. There's a fundamentally different state. It's transformed from its tendency towards just selfish, I'm enjoying this, I get these sensations, to have a slightly more elevated nature to it.
Sensations are universal. It's not my sensations or something. Are you feeling that?
Well, almost like that pleasure, what could possibly be... Pleasure is only a problem because we attach to it and it stops us looking for the highest pleasure of oneness. So if we can imbue our pleasure and relate it to the experience of oneness, it's a subtle shift between I'm getting this sensation and we are making love.
Yeah.
If you're in that space, it's a spiritual experience. So...
And did you say in Kashmir... Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, go on.
Did you say that in Kashmir Shaivism that there's detachment?
Well, I meant that there's a general. I've noticed there's a general, like you said, when they did that course, the yoga is the beginning, right? So, of course, the yoga is like meditation. It has several functions. One is to make you just more sensitive to what the hell's going on. I mean, you can't make any progress if you're lacking awareness. You have to be aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it. Am I lying to myself? What am I doing this for? Why is this happening? Or whatever. It's just a constant awareness or an inquiry. So all these practices are really refining your sense of awareness. But often also there's these physical things, like it's same in Chinese sexual yoga, the physically raising the energy through the microcosmic orbit and so forth. I mean, I never found that stuff that necessary myself. I found that I agreed more with the Buddhist talk, that if you basically have the right attitude, all that energy stuff kind of takes care of itself.
I don't understand what you meant by detachment.
Detachment
It implies duality, right?
implies duality. Oh yes. Well, all Tantra is within the context of duality. But you have to take this as a starting point that it's not Advaita. It's like there's the preparatory paths, and then there's this supposedly direct path. The preparatory paths are preparing the being and the body and the mind to see more clearly, to approach. But even within the preparatory path, there's a sense of oneness. We wouldn't even be attracted to it if there wasn't, right? It's probably what attracts us to everything and everything, actually, ultimately. So, yeah, it implies duality, and detachment is to get a proper balance. Like, let's say you're not aware of your body and you engage in sex, then you might be completely through your mind. You could be creating those desires and actually, I mean, you can do that anyway, but if that has a certain way of expressing itself in the body that's very like kind of here-centered, for instance, for a male, then you're not going to be able to get perspective because your energy isn't properly balanced, and so that assists in a kind of a raw form to let the body be able to experience itself in a more general, holistic way than in accordance with our inherited patterns that are just like bam, bam, you know, it's biology saying, get it out of the way, finish it now, and under 5 minutes, apparently the average. So anyway, I don't know if I should be talking about these things, but the reason why I say that is that I've seen some people go wrong with Hindu Tantra, that when it's overly mechanical like that and they miss the point. I really believe it's true that if you to meditate upon the heart and compassion is a really important aspect of coming to understand what Tantra is really about. And it's the same thing in life, right? Because life is about heart. Life is about heart. You can have this direct path and sit there and say, well, I'm consciousness. I've been told that I don't care about the heart. What's that? That's a duality. That doesn't fit with my rule set. My dogma, you know. But the truth is in the heart. You know, if you're sensitive, you don't have to attach to it. Their assumption that you're going to attach to it. Everyone is going to attach. We're all mixed beings. Every experience, even spiritual experience, we receive on multiple levels. We receive the truth of it. We receive the feeling of it. We receive the thought of it. And we have to deal with the fact that they're bundled. But to just rule it out at the outset that you shouldn't do those things because you're going to get confused is a presumption, which isn't necessarily true in my understanding. Do you know what I mean? So you'll get that at Advaita teachings,
Yeah.
and that's great for the sake of the teaching, but I'd just be very careful about walking away with a lot of what they say. It's what I would hope to communicate to you. Don't. I've seen people just sincerely come to India on strong spiritual quest, which in Buddhism we're trained to say, oh, I respect that. You know, they say the Buddha bows down to the new moon. The person who's finally karmically come to the point where they seek the truth, and they go to a Advaita Satsang and they say, stop seeking. I don't want to hear what you have to say. It's like short-circuiting a natural process. Yes, for the purpose of the seeing, but that's it. That's what I believe, having seen so many people have ongoing problems for decades, expecting themselves to not think ever again and stuff.